What if the foods you've been told are healthy are actually putting your heart at risk? What if the biggest cause of heart attacks and strokes isn't genetics, stress, or even cholesterol, but what's on your plate right now? And what if decades of advice about heart health were built on a myth that science has already disproven? Hello, health champions. I'm Dr. Nana, and today we're diving deep into the top 10 foods that destroy your heart and why understanding the truth could literally save your life. Cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer in the world. Every year, it claims about 18 million lives globally. That's twice as many deaths as the second leading cause, cancer. And this number includes both heart attacks, where the heart muscle is starved of oxygen, and strokes, which happen when blood flow in the brain is blocked by a clot or interrupted by a bleed. While there's little disagreement that cardiovascular disease is largely driven by lifestyle, especially diet, there's still massive confusion about which foods are the real culprits. That's exactly what we're going to clear up today. I'll walk you through the real mechanisms behind heart disease, so you won't fall for the next flashy list or catchy headline claiming to reveal the worst foods for your heart. When I searched online for foods that cause heart disease, I found over 759 million results. The first article that popped up, not a paid ad, just the top organic result, came from a well-known health site. And just like so many others, it repeated the same old script. Saturated fat is bad because it raises LDL, cholesterol, and LDL causes heart disease. This idea took root 50, 60, even 70 years ago, and despite mountains of evidence proving otherwise, it still clings to public health advice today. The truth? People who eat high-quality saturated fats actually tend to live longer and are less likely to develop heart disease. In fact, healthy saturated fats can play a role in reversing heart disease. Yet the mantra we keep hearing is to avoid animal products like butter, coconut oil, lard, beef, lamb, eggs, and bacon. Dairy? Only eat the non-fat or low-fat versions. And that, my friends, is a big part of the problem. To make things worse, they'll lump pastries and biscuits onto the same bad food list almost as an afterthought without understanding the key difference. Animal products contain stable, naturally occurring saturated fats that your body can handle. Pastries, on the other hand, are loaded with vegetable oils that have been artificially hardened through partial hydrogenation, a process that turns them into toxic, inflammatory fats. And that's not even the whole story. Pastries also bring a triple threat: sugar, preservatives, and modern refined grains like processed wheat and starches. Grouping these very different foods together, without explaining why, just adds to the confusion about what really drives heart disease. So let's strip away the myths and start with the truth. We're going to work backwards. At the top of the chain is cardiovascular disease. This happens when blood vessels are damaged. Vascular simply refers to your blood vessels, and when those vessels are injured, that's when heart disease takes root. Small cracks and lesions inside the arteries lead the body to patch them up, sometimes with a buildup of plaque or calcium deposits. If clots form and break free, they can lodge in the brain and trigger a stroke. So the big question is, what causes that initial damage? It boils down to two destructive forces: inflammation and oxidative stress. Those are the tools that inflict harm on your blood vessels. But where do inflammation and oxidative stress come from? Which foods set them in motion? The answer starts with the body's most common and dangerous adaptation: insulin resistance. This single condition fuels both inflammation and oxidative stress, making it the #1 underlying driver for most heart disease cases. And that's where we'll pick up in the next part, breaking down exactly how insulin resistance develops and which everyday foods are pushing you closer to it. In the last section, we uncovered that inflammation and oxidative stress are the twin forces directly damaging your blood vessels, and that insulin resistance is often the main trigger behind both. But here's the thing: insulin resistance may be the most common cause of heart disease, yet it's not the only one. Even if you've never been diagnosed with insulin resistance, you're not off the hook. Cardiovascular disease can still develop through other pathways, such as exposure to toxins, chronic stress, or consuming harmful fats. That's why today we need to go deeper, not only to understand insulin resistance, but also to shine a light on the other troublemakers. Let's set the record straight about fats first. Fat itself is not the villain it's been made out to be. In reality, there are good fats and bad fats, and lumping them together as if they all work the same is one of the biggest nutritional mistakes of the last century. The real danger lies in certain processed oils. We'll talk about which ones those are, why they damage your heart, and how they work against your body's natural balance. When it comes to insulin resistance, though, the number one offender is sugar. And right behind it, in a close second, are those harmful processed oils. Understanding the connection is crucial, because once you grasp the sequence of causation, how one problem triggers another, you'll see why it's impossible to fix your heart without addressing these root causes. Here's what's important to know. Insulin resistance isn't a permanent disease. It's not a fixed state. It's an adaptation. Your body develops it in response to your lifestyle, mainly the way you eat. And just like it develops, it can reverse. Change your lifestyle, and the body can shed insulin resistance. In fact, advanced insulin resistance is essentially type 2 diabetes, and in the vast majority of cases, both can be reversed. But to reverse them, you must stop eating the foods that keep creating the problem in the first place. So, let's start climbing up the chain of causation to the very top, where we find the actual foods that drive cardiovascular disease. Food number 10, rice. And now, rice might not be the worst food we'll discuss, but it can still be a problem. To understand why, we need to talk about glucose and carbohydrates in a way most people have never heard explained. When we say carbohydrates, we're talking about plant-based foods that, once digested, get broken down and absorbed into your bloodstream as glucose, also known as blood sugar. Glucose is a simple sugar, a 6-carbon ring molecule called a monosaccharide. And here's something most people miss. All plants are primarily made of glucose. If you eat something sweet, like table sugar, that's technically a disaccharide to simple sugars joined together. In sucrose, one side is glucose, the other side is fructose. Glucose has 6 carbons, fructose has 5. But here's the kicker, that glucose portion is the same whether it comes from table sugar or from a complex carbohydrate. This is where the myth begins. You've probably heard, sugar is bad, but complex carbs are good. The problem is, complex carbs, the ones in foods like rice, potatoes, and grains, are still just glucose, linked together into long chains called starch. When your body stores carbs, it strings glucose together a little differently and calls it glycogen. Even wood and plant fiber are made of glucose, just arranged in a way that we can't digest. But whether it's a sweet treat or a starchy side dish, your body eventually breaks it down to glucose. Here's why that matters. Starch is 100% glucose. That means it will raise blood sugar quickly. And when blood sugar goes up, it always triggers the release of insulin, the hormone that acts like a key, unlocking the cell gates so glucose can move inside and be burned for energy. This is a beautiful, well-designed system, until we overload it. Eating carbs occasionally or seasonally is not a problem. The system can handle it. But when carbohydrates become the foundation of your diet, eaten all day, every day, 365 days a year, your body gets overwhelmed. It's like trying to run a machine non-stop without ever letting it cool down. The constant flood of glucose forces constant insulin release. Over time, your cells stop responding to insulin as they should. That's when insulin resistance develops, the very condition that fuels inflammation, oxidative stress, and eventually heart disease. And rice, even though it might seem harmless compared to candy or soda, is still a high glucose food. White rice in particular is rapidly digested and absorbed, creating sharp spikes in blood sugar and insulin. Even brown rice, while often marketed as a healthier option, is still mostly glucose. The difference is minimal. The takeaway? Rice might not be enemy number one, but it's a steady contributor to the overload that pushes your metabolism toward insulin resistance. If your goal is to protect your heart, it's a food to watch closely, especially if it's already a staple on your plate. Now that you see how a common, healthy carbohydrate like rice can play a role in damaging your heart over time, let's move down the list and uncover the next food offender, one you might be eating every single day without realizing how much harm it's causing. In the last section, we uncovered how rice, though not the worst offender, can still fuel insulin resistance when it's part of a modern, high-carb, highly processed diet. But you might be wondering, if rice is such a problem, how did people in Asia eat it for centuries and stay healthy? The answer is simple. Historically, life looked completely different. People didn't have an abundance of food. They ate rice, yes, but without all the processed junk that fills modern grocery stores. Their days were filled with physical labor, often sunup to sundown. They ate only 2 or 3 meals, not 6 snacks a day. There were no sodas, no sugary teas, no constant sipping on calorie-filled drinks. And importantly, there were no shelves stacked with packaged, processed foods loaded with refined grains, sugar, and chemicals. In that environment, rice wasn't a problem. But combine rice with a diet high in processed foods, and the story changes. And once you've developed insulin resistance, once your body's fuel system is already clogged, rice shifts from a harmless staple to a roadblock that stops you from reversing the damage. Now, about sugar, because we need to clear up a major misconception. Everyone knows white sugar is bad, and most people have heard high fructose corn syrup is bad too. So they say, I'll just avoid those too. But here's the truth. There's really no difference between all the other forms of sugar. Brown sugar, light brown sugar, powdered sugar, agave, nectar, honey, dextrose, grape sugar, molasses, glucose syrup. They're all just different blends of glucose and fructose. The body breaks them down the same way, and they all raise blood sugar, spike insulin, and feed insulin resistance. Then comes the question I hear all the time, but fruit is still amazing for you, right? The short answer: not if you already have insulin resistance or poor metabolic health. Fruit isn't evil, it contains water, fiber, and nutrients. But the sugar inside fruit is still just glucose and fructose in varying ratios. Your body doesn't treat that sugar any differently than it treats table sugar. Yes, fruit is a better choice than a candy bar because it's less concentrated and digested more slowly, but the insulin response is still there. If you're metabolically healthy, you can enjoy some fruit in moderation. But if you're diabetic or trying to reverse a disease, cut it way back. Stick to small portions of low-sugar berries now and then. And please, don't get sucked into the vague "eat more fruits and vegetables" slogan. What you actually need is more vegetables, less fruit. And remember, starch is still 100% sugar once it's digested. That includes rice, potatoes, and beans. Corn is another big one. It's so high in starch they literally make cornstarch out of it. Tapioca, sorghum, different names, same problem. This is why gluten-free doesn't automatically mean healthy. Many gluten-free breads and pizzas are still loaded with starch from rice flour, tapioca, or sorghum. You're just swapping one form of sugar for another. Food number 9. Bread. Everything we've said about rice applies to bread, except bread is often worse. The starch content is the same, the insulin spike is the same, but bread brings a new set of problems: allergies and sensitivities, especially to wheat and gluten. These sensitivities can trigger inflammation and disrupt gut health, both of which feed into cardiovascular disease. Even if you've never tested allergic to gluten, it's worth trying a gluten-free period to see how your body responds. Poor gut health often hides in plain sight, showing up as bloating, fatigue, skin problems, or joint pain. Food number 8. Alcohol. You might be surprised to see alcohol on this list. After all, alcohol is a natural substance, and in small amounts, your body can process it. We even have an enzyme, alcohol dehydrogenase, designed to break it down. So it's not inherently poisonous in tiny doses. But once you cross into excess, things change. Alcohol overloads your liver, and as we'll see next, when the liver gets overwhelmed, the damage reaches far beyond just one organ. From here, we'll take a closer look at how excess alcohol stresses your liver, fuels inflammation, and keeps your cardiovascular risk high, and we'll uncover the other bad fats that can quietly accelerate this process. Earlier, we left off with alcohol, a substance that can be harmless in moderation, but devastating when overdone. Now let's unpack why it can be so damaging, and how it shares some dangerous traits with another modern-day culprit. The liver is the only organ in your body that can actually break down and neutralize alcohol. Yes, alcohol touches every cell as it circulates through your bloodstream, but only the liver has the machinery to process it and make it safe. And, as with many substances, a little isn't necessarily harmful, it's the excess that turns it into a threat. A glass of wine now and then? No problem. A bottle of wine every night? That's a direct path to trouble. Overwhelm the liver often enough, and you develop fatty liver. For decades, fatty liver almost always meant alcoholic fatty liver disease. But today, most cases are actually non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and the number one driver isn't alcohol. It's fructose. Remember, table sugar, or sucrose, is half glucose and half fructose. That fructose is processed only by the liver, just like alcohol. A few berries here and there? No problem. But flood your system with sodas, candy, sweetened snacks, and processed foods, and you've just overloaded your liver in the exact same way as heavy drinking. Once fat builds up inside the liver, it becomes insulin resistant. And because the liver is the body's metabolic control tower, that resistance spreads. Fat starts accumulating in the abdominal cavity, inflammation rises, and the whole body shifts toward metabolic dysfunction. So, if you choose to drink, less is always better. But if you do, pure distilled spirits like gin, vodka, whiskey, rum, or cognac are the least sugary options, because they've been distilled, leaving virtually no sugar behind. Wine is slightly worse, because it starts as grapes high in natural sugars, but fermentation removes most of that sweetness. Still, some sugar remains. Beer? That's a bigger problem. It's made from grains and malt, which means more carbohydrates, more glucose, and a bigger insulin hit. The worst offenders? Mixed drinks, because now you're stacking alcohol and large amounts of sugar together. That's a double load for your liver, forcing it to process two toxins at once. And while alcohol is obviously harmful in excess, sugar is arguably more dangerous long-term, because it's addictive. With alcohol, you usually know when you've had too much. Sugar? It keeps you coming back for just one more. Food number 7. Ultra-processed food. Shear's another heart destroyer, and it's not just one food, but a whole category. Think about the difference between a fresh salmon fillet or an avocado and a brightly colored snack in a crinkly bag. Whole foods meat, nuts, eggs, fish, vegetables, tubers, fruit come from the earth in their natural form. But once we start chopping, drying, pulverizing, adding artificial ingredients, packaging, and engineering flavors, it becomes ultra-processed food. A century ago, these made up only a tiny fraction of our diets. Even 50 years ago, less than 10% of the average American's calories came from ultra-processed sources. Today, in the US, it's a staggering 73%. Nearly 3 out of every 4 calories we eat are coming from food that's been engineered, not grown. Globally, the percentage is lower for now, but it's rising fast. Many countries are already at 50% or higher. Why is that a problem? Because ultra-processed foods are usually built out of the worst possible ingredients. They're loaded with added sugars, refined grains, chemical preservatives, artificial flavors, and addictive combinations of salt, sugar, and fat. The food industry literally designs these products to light up the brain's pleasure centers, so you keep reaching for more. They also tend to be heavy in seed oils, often hydrogenated, which we'll be talking about in more detail soon. These oils are unstable, inflammatory, and damaging to your cardiovascular system. From here, we'll move into exactly which fats and oils cause the most harm, and why they're often hiding in plain sight in the foods we eat every day. We've just seen how ultra-processed foods are stripped of real nutrition and loaded with unhealthy ingredients. Now, let's dig deeper into 2 massive contributors hiding in plain sight: fast food and seed oils. When manufacturers refine oils to the point where even bacteria won't touch them, you know they're not good for you. These oils are processed so aggressively that most of their natural nutrients are destroyed, and the few nutrients that remain, often removed on purpose, because those same compounds that are good for your body are also the ones that react with air, light, and heat, which would shorten shelf life. From a manufacturer's perspective, that's perfect. The product lasts longer on store shelves. But for us, it's a disaster. What we're left with isn't truly food anymore. It's calorie-dense but nutrient-poor, leading to a strange modern reality. We're overfed yet undernourished. Here's the problem. When your body doesn't get the nutrients it needs, it keeps sending hunger signals: eat more, I'm still missing something. Add in the engineered flavors and addictive chemicals, and you end up in a cycle of overeating, clogging up your system, and sliding deeper into insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, and poor cardiovascular health. Food number 6. Fast food. Technically, it's just another type of processed food, but fast food comes with its own set of problems. At a glance, it looks like real food. There's meat in the burger, some grain in the bun, maybe even a slice of pickle or onion for vegetables. But let's break it down. That bun? It's just bread, which we've already covered as essentially pure sugar once digested. The burger dressing? Packed with seed oils and sugar. The fries? Potatoes, pure starch cooked in the same unstable seed oils reused again and again, making them even more harmful. And of course, the meal is usually served with soda or a milkshake, both sugar bombs. I once ran an experiment where I ate 100 hamburger patties in 10 days, pairing them mostly with salads. That came out to about 2,500 calories a day. Then I compared it to eating the same calorie count at a typical fast food chain, and the numbers were shocking. With fast food, Those 2,500 calories would deliver over 300 grams of carbohydrates, only 70 grams of protein, and around 100 grams of fat, the wrong kind of fat. Carbs would make up 65% of the total calories in line with mainstream recommendations, protein just 9%, and fat about 25%. On paper, it matches official dietary guidelines, but in reality, it's a metabolic disaster. Worse yet, buried in those numbers is about 150 grams of added sugar every single day, shockingly close to what the average American consumes. And that's before factoring in the unhealthy oils. Food number 5. Seed oils. People often ask me, why are you always criticizing seed oils and vegetable oils, but you say extra virgin olive oil is fine? Aren't they all from plants? Yes, they're all plant-based, but the differences are huge. Oils made from seeds: corn, soybean, sunflower, safflower, canola, cottonseed are extremely high in omega-6 fatty acids. Your body does need omega-6 and omega-3 in balance, ideally close to a 1-to-1 ratio. But the modern Western diet skews that ratio to around 20-to-1, with omega-6 dominating, and that imbalance is highly pro-inflammatory. In small amounts and in balance, omega-6 isn't a villain. But when it's excessive and comes from heavily processed sources, it becomes a driver of chronic inflammation, a key player in heart disease. Extracting oil from seeds isn't easy. It requires enormous pressure, high heat, and often chemical solvents like acetone to pull the fat out. This harsh processing damages the delicate fats, leaving them oxidized and rancid before they even hit store shelves. When we talk about vegetable oils or seed oils, 3 in particular dominate global consumption, and they account for an astonishing share of the processed food supply. We'll break those down next, and you'll see why avoiding them might be one of the most important steps you can take for your heart. We've seen how seed oils can silently sabotage your health. Now, let's get specific about the worst offenders, how they're made, and why they're so destructive, plus how they connect to 2 more major problem foods. When I talk about vegetable oils being harmful, I'm mainly referring to soybean oil, canola oil, and corn oil. Together, they make up the vast majority of seed oils in our diet. Soybean oil comes from a legume, canola from rapeseed, and corn oil from, you guessed it, a grain. None of these plants are naturally oil-rich, which means extracting oil from them isn't easy. That's why manufacturers rely on intense pressure, high heat, and chemical solvents to get it out. The end result? A damaged oil that tastes awful. To make it palatable, they bleach it, degum it, deodorize it, and run it through multiple chemical treatments. By the time it hits store shelves, it's a bland, nutritionally empty liquid that can sit there for years without going bad because it's already been stripped of anything that could spoil. This is why I always stress, oil itself isn't automatically bad just because it comes from a plant. The real issue is how it's processed. With naturally oily plants like olives or coconuts, you can press them gently and get rich, healthy oils like extra virgin olive oil or unrefined coconut oil without destroying their integrity. Even canola can be cold-pressed and organic, which makes it much less harmful, though still not my first choice. Walnut and avocado oils can also be cold-pressed, retaining their flavor and nutrients. But keep in mind, minimally processed oils usually have a stronger taste, something most people aren't used to after years of bland mass-produced oils. Food number 4. Fried food. The issue here isn't frying in itself, it's what oil you're frying in and how it's handled. Most commercial frying is done with the same over-processed seed oils we just discussed. That's already bad, but it gets worse. These oils are reheated over and over, sometimes sitting at high temperatures all day. This repeated heating damages the oil even more, making it increasingly oxidized and rancid, which creates significant oxidative stress in your body. If you do want to fry occasionally, choose stable, heat-resistant fats like lard, tallow, or coconut oil. These are naturally saturated, meaning they resist oxidation and rancidity. You can leave coconut oil on the counter for months and it stays perfectly fine. That's the kind of stability you want when heating food. Food number 3. Margarine. Although its popularity has declined somewhat, margarine is still widely used and still a problem. It's made from the same harmful oils we've been talking about. Some brands now advertise using olive oil or other healthier oils, but here's the truth. They're not using extra virgin olive oil. Instead, it's a much more processed version with most of the beneficial compounds removed, otherwise the flavor would be too strong for mass appeal. To make margarine spreadable, manufacturers must hydrogenate the oil, basically hardening it. Years ago, This was done through partial hydrogenation, which created trans fats, one of the worst substances you can put in your body. These days, they use more fully hydrogenated oils, but if you check labels, you'll still find many margarines with partially hydrogenated oils hiding in the ingredients. And here's the danger. Trans fats aren't just unhealthy, they're toxic. They start as already damaged seed oils, then their molecular structure is altered even further. This wreaks havoc on your mitochondria, the tiny power plants inside your cells that produce about 95% of your body's energy. Your ability to think clearly, move, and function depends on healthy mitochondria. But trans fats increase free radical damage inside them, disrupt energy production, and essentially poison these vital cell components. The health and longevity of your mitochondria play a huge role in how well and how long you live. And that's why foods containing these oils and fats are such a silent but devastating threat. Up next, we'll look at two more major culprits that most people never think about, yet they're quietly undermining heart health every single day. We've covered some of the most damaging foods for your heart, but as we close this list, there are two more that deserve the top spots, not only because of what they are individually, but because of the way they represent the worst possible combinations of everything we've talked about so far. For years, regulators and nutrition experts have known how dangerous trans fats are. In fact, they're now banned in many countries, and food companies are required to disclose them on the label. But here's the tricky part. Can you actually trust those trans fat-free claims on the packaging? If a product contains partially hydrogenated oils, it contains trans fats, period. The only question is, how much? And here's the loophole. If the amount is less than 0.5 grams per serving, manufacturers can legally round it down to zero. That means they can slap trans fat-free on the front, even if there's still a measurable amount inside. The trick is simple. They shrink the serving size to something unrealistically small. Eat a realistic portion or a few portions, and you could easily take in multiple grams of trans fats in a single snack, more than enough to harm your health. And as we've already discussed, trans fats don't just increase your risk of heart disease, they also attack your mitochondria, the tiny power plants inside your cells, making it harder for your body to produce energy and fight oxidative stress. Food number 2. Donuts and everything like them. Donuts aren't just a treat. They are practically a perfect storm of bad nutrition. Every harmful factor we've talked about is represented here. Sugar, sky-high levels that spike blood sugar and drive insulin resistance. Refined starch, white flour that's quickly converted to glucose. Gluten, a common trigger for gut inflammation and sensitivities. Seed oils, both in the dough and in the deep fryer. Frying damage, repeated high heat cooking that oxidizes the oils. Artificial additives, flavorings, colors, and preservatives. The only thing missing is alcohol, and if they tried to put it in, it would just cook out during frying. In a way, donuts almost seem engineered to combine every metabolic insult possible into a single bite. And sadly, it's not just donuts. Many pastries, fried snacks, and packaged desserts share the same destructive profile. Food number 1. Sugar. While donuts may combine multiple bad elements, sugar itself earns the number 1 spot for a simple reason. It's everywhere. It's the most widespread dietary toxin in modern life, hiding not only in obvious treats but also in foods we think of as savory or healthy. Sugar provides empty calories, pure energy with no vitamins, minerals, or other nutrients, while disrupting nearly every metabolic process in your body. About half of table sugar is fructose, which acts much like alcohol in the liver, driving fat buildup and contributing to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. It's also incredibly addictive. Many unhealthy foods will naturally limit themselves. You might only eat a few bites before feeling full or losing interest. But sugar bypasses those signals entirely. You can drink a soda and immediately want another, then another. Some people can down a 2-liter bottle of soda or a gallon of sweet tea in a single day without feeling satisfied. And it's not just in drinks. Sugar hides in barbecue sauce, which can be sweeter than Coca-Cola, in condiments, in breakfast cereals, in breads, and in nearly every packaged or processed food you can imagine. High fructose corn syrup, a near-identical cousin of sugar, is equally harmful and just as common. This is why sugar tops the list, because it's almost impossible to avoid without actively reading labels and making conscious choices. It fuels inflammation, oxidative stress, and insulin resistance, the same 3 mechanisms we've identified as the true root causes of heart disease. Final thought: here's the truth. Many of the foods you've been told are bad for your heart, like butter, eggs, or certain animal fats, are actually fine when consumed as part of a whole food diet. The real danger lies in the ultra-processed, sugar-loaded, seed oil-heavy products that dominate modern grocery shelves and fast food menus. If you can consistently avoid the foods we've talked about today or even greatly reduce them, you'll remove the biggest drivers of cardiovascular disease, improve your metabolic health, and give your body the best chance to heal and thrive. Closing call to action. If you found this breakdown helpful and eye-opening, imagine what else you can learn about protecting your health and living longer. That's exactly what we do here at Senior Health Boost. Give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so you never miss a single tip that could literally change or even save your life. I'm Dr. Nana, and I'll see you in the next video.